Hello and welcome to today's WholeHearted Living podcast episode with your host Debs Thorpe. And today we are diving into the topic of, as you're walking through your journey of living in your fullness, living in your wholehearted life, knowing the times when you need to push through and when you need to surrender. So let's dive in. So this is a topic that I really love talking about, similar to last episode 20 when I explored and introduced the concept of bridging the gap when we are navigating that point of change and how that can feel like no man's land. Today I'm wanting to introduce you to the topic of almost kind of when it is that you want to be pushing through certain things and when we then also need to surrender. And like pretty much everything that you will come to know and learn, and even in your own experience, when it comes to the journey of deepening the connection with ourselves, becoming more and more of who we truly are, walking this path of personal growth and development, the lines aren't black and white. Okay, so it's not about, okay, always in this circumstance do this and always in this circumstance do this. One of the delights of this journey, if you like, is the reawakening of your own innate wisdom so that you can begin to tune into and know what it is to be in connection with your higher self, with your intuition, with your inner wisdom, so that navigating this journey becomes easier in the sense of you know which part of you are listening to at any one moment. And that's kind of what this topic is tapping into again today. So there's no hard and fast rule about when you should be pushing through and when you should be surrendering and letting go. It's about which part of you are listening to in that moment. So I'm going to use the example of physical exercise and running for this, because this is something that I can speak from experience with, is that running for me is a time where I can deeply connect with that real childlike identity within myself. Okay, so I particularly love trail running, which is off-road running. I love exploring new places. I love going and taking routes and trails that I've not been on before. I love the exploration and the discovery. I was exactly the same as a kid. Okay, I was that child who would take myself off for the day, or I'd meet my friends and we'd go and explore and we'd build dens, and so for me, trail running now as an adult connects me really directly with that very child like curiosity and wonder and adventure within myself. So therefore, for me personally, running is quite different to a lot of other runners that I might speak to. So for as much as I'll have a watch and I'll log my run, generally it's never ever about the time or the pace or did I do better on that run than my last run. I measure my run based on like what new places I explored, what adventures I had, how much fun I had while I was doing it. Okay, that's my measurement. That's my metric for running, not pace, distance, what my heart rate was or any of that stuff. Whereas for other people, that will be their main focus, right? Maybe they run because it's a really accessible form of exercise, and they are actively wanting to get fitter and improve their cardio. And so they're motivated by seeing those improvements within themselves. Okay, so we all have like different intentions and motivations. And so when I talk about knowing when to push, me physically getting my trainers on and getting out the door will oftentimes feel like a push. I'm physically having to push my physical self to get ready and get out of the door, because it would much rather stay inside where it's comfortable, snuggle up on the sofa, or find a million other things to do. Because there is, at times, and especially at the beginning of a run, physical discomfort in it. Okay. However, I know that, when I don't run every day, but when I feel that calling, if you like, that deep desire that's like, it would be really good for you to move your body in this way today, or, you've been a bit disconnected from your inner child and it's time to go and have some fun or have an adventure. When I feel that calling, when I feel that desire inside, I know that I will inevitably have to like push my physical body to follow it. I actually when I've been reflecting on how I wanted to talk about this in the podcast episode, there's a sense that it's almost, I feel a pull. So for me, it feels like a push and a pull. I feel the pull from my higher self, if you like, from my intuition. I've got that nudge of a desire or an idea. So I feel a pull. Like, that's the only way I can describe it. I feel a pull towards that thing. And at the same time, that may, and it very typically will involve some sort of push of my physical self initially. Now, eventually my body gets on board with it and it will settle into it. I am a distance runner, so typically for me that takes at least 5k for me to feel like I'm settling into the run, and then I can keep going for much longer. So I know that I'm in for probably 30-40 minutes of discomfort at the start of that run, but I can feel the pull of, whatever it is in that moment that's guiding me towards that. Now, 100% of the time, that will lead to some discovery or some amazing experience, or I'll find a new path that I'd not known about before, or I'll end up physically, mentally, emotionally feeling in a very different place. So there's always a reward in that, right? It's like always. So I know last episode I talked about the bridging of the gap in change. That gap typically has got smaller and smaller for me in certain things, because it's easier for me to have that intuitive idea or feel the pull of an idea and just go and do it, than it is to sit in the battleground of, oh, but physically it would be much easier if I just stay here, and oh, but I could be doing that if I didn't go for a run. And like, there's, I don't like being in the negotiation bit between almost like my physical self and my higher self. It's easier to just like cut that time down and just go and do the thing, because I've done it enough times now to know that there will be some reward in it, even if I can't tangibly say what that is from the beginning. So that's one example of this kind of like push-pull thing. The surrender comes in with the not knowing what that ultimate result might be. Okay, so I'll give a different example when it comes to. Uh, I mean, actually, I can carry on with this example just for a second. When it comes to the surrender, so when I feel that call or that inner prompt, that inner pull to go for a run, and then I push my physical self to do it, I am surrendering what I believe that experience should be. So the time in my life when I most fell out of love with running, and I actually really, really did not on any level want to do it at all, was when I started clocking my pace. And there's so many factors that influence a run. You know, how much water I've consumed the day before, how much food I've eaten, what time of the month it is, how well I've slept. All of these factors will, determine whether I feel like I'm having, a good or a better run than I did last time. But so when I reduced it to, am I running this, am I doing this run on a quicker pace than last time? Or, is my heart rate lower? The second I started measuring it, I hated it because I was trying to put an outcome on it that one is not aligned to me at all, because that's not why I go running. But also I was trying to force a result that, unless I was going to design my whole life around getting better at running every time I go out, just, was not going to happen. And so the surrender part of that for me comes into, I'm feeling the prompt to go for a run. I'm going to get my physical self on board with it, or I'm at least going to show up and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to surrender to what and be open to what this experience is going to be. That's like the optimum point for me, to then just go out and embrace it and enjoy it for whatever it's going to be. The surrender happens in the greater scheme of our lives with bigger things as well. So if you haven't checked out the second bonus episode that I've done, which talks about daring to dream, I go into the very recent manifestation, really, of a long held dream of mine, which has been to move to Italy and live in Italy. And at the time this dream was conceived, there was no way that I could stay long term in Italy because I didn't qualify for a visa. And yet it was still this really deep dream and desire of mine. And so this art of surrender comes into like staying connected with that dream and that desire, and surrendering exactly how that's going to happen. So you're not in this energy of trying to force and push and, like put all of your effort into it. You're like, okay, well, for whatever reason, I have got this dream and desire within me. I have no clue at this moment in time how this is going to possibly happen. But you know what? I'm going to stay connected to it. I'm going to allow myself to almost kind of bathe in the energy of that desire. And I'm going to surrender knowing exactly how that's going to happen. And that's exactly what happened for me. And, that's where I think some people can get a bit caught in this kind of push, pull, surrender. When do we take action, when we don't? Because there's always going to be action with whatever, bringing your desire into reality, right? So, when it comes to Italy, I stayed connected to the energy of Italy. This is where we came on holiday. This is where we built connections. And I would walk daily back in the UK and imagine that I was taking my daily walks through Italy, that I was seeing the mountains in the landscape, and I was looking at the lake, and I stayed connected with that. And um that that was me taking action. And then once the visa was released, that I really had to take a lot of action on that, right? But in my connecting with that desire, I surrendered to almost like the knowing that it was going to happen at some point, and I would stay connected to um, the possibilities and the action that would be required of me when it was the right time. So that's kind of the surrender point of all of this. So if we take it back to almost like the push and the pull, there are going to be times when you will feel like you are needing to push yourself through discomfort. I don't believe that we can get to, whatever it is that we're aiming for, the next level of ourselves, a deeper experience of ourselves and life, without there being some level of discomfort, whether that's bringing up an old wound that needs healing, or some pain that we need to alchemize, or stepping out more into our fullness in the world, right? All of these can be really uncomfortable aspects. And if we're not prepared for knowing that there's going to be some discomfort, we might not ever push ourselves through that. And so that for me is where this like push and pull comes in. So I don't think it's about, like, when I think about push and sheer will and striving, I think about like clenched fists and this real like tenseness in the body that's like, right, we're just gonna, by sheer will, we're just gonna force this. Okay, it's not that type of stuff. It's almost tuning into that pull, that natural pull of the dream, the desire, the goal, the next level you, the full embodied, freedom, authentic you, being in touch with that and feeling the pull that comes from that, and allowing that to aid you in whatever push you will need to do for your like physical human self to get you to that point. So again, running is a good example of this for me. I really, really love a good physical challenge. Really love it. Do check out my YouTube channel at Debs Thorpe. For I've recorded a lot of the running events, and they really do showcase where the mental and the physical meet each other, because I've done a couple of ultra marathons, and there's nothing like taking your body beyond where it thinks it's possible that really helps with this kind of push and surrender aspect of personal growth. Because generally for me at mile 20 of a run, my body is hurting. Okay, it's the fatigue is kicking in, the lactic acid has built up in the muscles. It's hard. It's hard from that point. And I've done 30 and 34 mile events before, and so at this stage you've still got quite a long way to go. And of course everything physically in me at that stage wants to stop. It wants to quit. I did one event where I did all north to south Dartmoor in the UK, and that was 34 miles. And I remember kind of not even halfway through that, having almost like this crying fit in the middle of Dartmoor, going like, I can't do this anymore. This is just a nightmare. But I was in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere. There was no one around me. I had no phone signal. And so it was like, well, I actually don't have any choice in this moment but to keep going. Even if that's only to the next checkpoint where there's going to be some people there. Like, in this moment, I have no choice. I have to keep going. And so there is a push that's involved in that, right? But then something amazing always happens, and this is why I love long distance running, is your body gets on board with it. Okay, so it understands that you're going to keep going no matter what, really. And so it then, after, generally for me, after a couple of miles of feeling like this is hell, it gets on board. And it's like, okay, well, if we're here until the end, then I'm with you. Like, let's do this. And it's not like all the pain and all the fatigue goes, but it definitely lessens. And at that point, then mentally, you begin to feel a little bit stronger and, like it's possible. And, there's kind of no negotiation that goes on from then. It's like, okay, we're in this until the end, so let's just get on with it. So that's when I talk about the nuances of this, knowing when to push, when to surrender, when to back off. It's very much related to being connected with your higher self, with your inner guidance, your inner wisdom. What is it that you're being pulled towards? Keeping that as your focus. And then, that may involve some push through some physical discomfort in order to fully reach that. It may be that you go through a bit of discomfort and then there's more ease on the other side of it. It may be that you are being called to surrender in that moment. But really, it's keeping the focus of your inner guidance, your higher self, what it is you're being pulled towards, and then honoring that within yourself. So, another good example of this is within business. So I'm at the stage at the moment of creating a few new containers and new ways of working as I'm evolving and I'm stepping more fully into myself and my gifts. And I'm really wanting to deepen my service and impact in the world. So I will receive an idea, an intuitive nudge, if you like, and I will honor that, and I will action that in the way that I feel most guided to. And then I will surrender what then happens with that in the universe. I don't have control over then what happens with that out in the world, right? All I can do is stay true to that intuitive idea, stay true to that intuitive wisdom and the action that's been taken, and then trust that the universe is going to do its thing in, helping that to reach the people who need to see it, right? The Dream Lodge, which is the new container that I have just created, is a perfect example of that. I had the idea to create an online collective of spiritual seekers, if you like, or people who are wanting to deepen in their experience of their own fullness and that of life, deepen the connection to their inner wisdom, their intuition, their higher self, and have a really supportive space to help them do that and navigate that. I had that idea one morning during meditation. I then created the container, what that looked like, put together the page on the website, and then started sending that out to a few people who I thought they would really, really enjoy this type of container. And I'd done that all within a day and got the first sign-ups the following day. So, you know, I followed and, took action and, had to push myself to get the work done right on that day. But then the surrender happens at the point of going, okay, well, I then can't control what then happens with this once I put it out into the world, but I'm going to surrender the result and trust that me following that intuitive guidance is the greatest expression of me in the universe in this moment. So I hope that's grounded it in a couple of examples that you can relate to. I'm sure that you will have had lots of different experiences of this in your own life. I could actually talk about the exact opposite of this, and maybe that will be for a future podcast episode. Let me know if you'd like to hear it, where I have been totally and utterly disconnected from my higher self and from my intuition, and I have lived the force and the push without that connection, and it led to extreme burnout. Okay, so I know what it is to live only pushing and striving and being in that energy and not being connected to this higher self, not having that pull and following that intuition. Like, I lived that for many years. So I know the exact opposite of this. And, it's why I can teach this in a way that is helping you to know which bit you need to be connected to in order to determine what action you take, because I've well and truly lived the opposite of this as well. And I know the stress and the tension and the burnout and the exhaustion that it leads to. So let me know how this lands for you. Let me know if you'd like me to dig into the opposite of this, of what happens when you just push. And I look forward to connecting with you again very soon. Bye for now.